Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Crushing Comics. I'm your host Peter, and we're here to fall in love with my comic book collection all over again. The last episode where we left our hero, me, I had just opened a box of brand new books that were shipped here from the States, and the last book I picked out of it was this. The Classic X-Men Omnibus. So, I have noticed that some of my esteemed peers have already made some fantastic videos about this book. And it's a peculiar book. But I want to talk about it because it's one of the omnibuses going up on my shelf, and I think it deserves to be talked about. And also, I am just eager to look into it, actually, because I have a pretty good understanding of the material that's inside of it. I haven't watched some of these videos, and so I'm totally unspoiled. Totally unspoiled. Like, I know the material that's in it, but I haven't seen anything about how it's presented. So, first let me explain what this book is. In the 80s, X-Men got to be a really, really big thing. It was getting to be increasingly big. And because the direct market didn't exist as such when Claremont took over the title in 1975, and because the X-Men just wasn't as huge a comic book at that point, it was hard to track down those issues. And because X-Men was emerging as one of the big phenomenons going into the speculator boom, those issues were on the expensive side. So, and Claremont was writing this huge ongoing soap opera that constantly referred back to itself, and there was no way to get a hold of it. So, Marvel launches this book called Classic X-Men. And Classic X-Men starts from Giant Size X-Men, 1975, and it reprints every issue sequentially of Claremont's run. Claremont started co-writing with the next issue published, number 94. So you can just be buying Classic X-Men, and it's not super rare, it's easier to pick up back issues, and you could just keep following it to catch up on all of the X-Men books that are out there, rather than having to track down their back issues. But because they also wanted to give people that maybe did have the back issues a reason to still purchase this book, Marvel did something a little bit special with it. You'll see that I'm currently opening a book properly here, giving it a little bit of opening on every side, letting it relax a little bit. So Marvel did something kind of special. They, and Chris Claremont, who supervised this whole thing, decided that they were going to add little backup stories to every issue to give you some added incentive to pick up Classic X-Men. Not only that, but they would also add occasional additional story pages or changes to the story in the text of the actual issue being reprinted. So that's some pretty wild stuff. And it was a great reason to buy these books. Now, of course, in retrospect, now that leaves these, I guess it was 44 backup stories that you would have to go and buy these issues, which I did because I'm a crazy person. And they were also once reprinted, some of them, about 2/3 of them reprinted in a paperback called X-Men Vignettes, Volume 1 and Volume 2, but we never got a Volume 3. And then furthermore, there was nowhere to see all of these additional story pages, which helped just put a little bit of extra connective tissue into Claremont's run with a little bit of retrospect. So this book, I refer to it as, it does not have the whole issues. It's not a complete reprint of all of the issues in the X-Men Classic run. What it is a print of all of that all-new extra material. And so I refer to this as, it's like the DVD bonus feature to Uncanny X-Men Volume 1, 2, and 3. So if you have those, and you treat that like it's like a movie box set, but of comic books, and you want to see all the deleted scenes, that's what this is. So here it is with the dust cover off. It's the same art that's on the dust cover, just without any words. And here you can go on a journey of discovery with me here as I find out how this book is laid out. So it's got an introduction by Ralph Macchio, and it starts out, okay, interesting. So here is the format, I guess, that's going to follow. It has this yellow page, which has the cover of the original comic book, Giant Size X-Men, and on that page it has a summary of that comic book, and then it has the cover of the corresponding Classic X-Men issue. And let's see. And then I guess it has the additional, actually this, wow. So this has a whole backup story here. Maybe I should go to one that's like a later one and see if I can find the in-between issues. So then, like, here's a great example. So here's the next issue of Uncanny X-Men number 94. And it says, Classic X-Men's number 2's new pages inserted between 94 pages 6 through 8 and 8 through 9, and replacing pages 7's training montage, expand on the new team's training period, introduce Moira McTaggart 2 issues before she originally first appeared, and spotlight Thunderbird's proud and self-destructive nature to better explain his actions next issue. The issue's backup story set during the team's training reveals how Storm and Marvel Girl's friendship began. So it truly is like a DVD deleted scenes. It tells you exactly where the pages fit in. Although it is a little bit awkward because then on the actual pages, it doesn't say what their page numbers are, really. So that's a little strange. But then it has the side-by-side here of some changes that were made. You can see here on this page. So this is, you know, it's going to be impossible to summarize all for you live on this video. But it basically is going to sequentially go through all of these series and tell you where the extra pages fit and where the backup pages fit. Now, what's interesting is that some of these stories included a backup that are not sequentially in the same place as their story. So here's an example of that. The classic X-Men version of X-Men 109, which introduced the original Guardian of Alpha Flight. And so it says where the new pages are inserted between issue 109, between pages 5 and 6, and after page 17, exploring two characters uneasy with their new surroundings. The still inexperienced James Hudson's feelings of tension before and after his first major battle, and Landra's first days living on the strange new planet of Earth. But this issue's backup story is set decades in the past, detailing a key relationship in young Sean Cassidy's life. Sean Cassidy, of course, is Banshee. So this is really different than those other stories, which are actually like set in the setting of that current issue. And again, I find it a little bit confusing because the extra pages aren't numbered. Like, I just feel like they should have some kind of annotation on them. And especially since you're almost definitely going to cross-reference them with one of the Uncanny X-Men omnibuses, like, it seems kind of funny to give issue numbers, because do these omnibuses have issue numbers in them? Or, I mean, page numbers? They don't. They don't include the original page numbering. So you kind of just have to go through the issue and count the number of pages if you want to figure out where these stories are inserted. So in this case, it includes the inserted pages first, and then it shows the edits, and then it has the entire Banshee story after that. So this, I mean, it's really, really like DVD extended features. And it's got all of those stories. So basically when Classic X-Men got to the end of the Phoenix Saga, it stopped doing these bonus stories. So it even says it right here with Classic X-Men 45, the series switched to an all reprint format, and the covers being only new material included. Issue 45 reprinted X-Men 139. So from there, we just get new covers, and this book collects all of them right to the end of what they reprinted. And it seems like the X-Men Classic 110 was the series' final issue. It included pinup featuring the unused cover art intended for 111, which would have reprinted X-Men 207. So we got over 100 issues of X-Men reprinted in this classic X-Men series. That is pretty cool. And then this additionally has some other X-Men classics reprint covers, and also X-Men The Early Years, which was a similar reprint series that was reprinting original Silver Age X-Men rather than Claremont era X-Men. So that's a really cool book, and it shows you how neat these Marvel releases can be when they know that there can be sales behind them. Like, this is a weird book, and it's hard to think of any publisher putting out a book like this that is an omnibus-sized anthology book and a book with, like, deleted scenes. It's weird, it's queer, it's strange. And it's hard to imagine anybody doing it, but Marvel did it because it's X-Men, and they have good data, I'm sure, on how the X-Men omnibuses sell, and they know they can move this, and they made a bet, and they made it as complete as they could possibly do it, and they put it together, and I think that's awesome. It's fascinating. I think this goes along with that idea of, like, the Shang-Chi omnibuses, where I'm like, when Marvel actually tells us what they're doing and, like, make sure that we're invested, we can get stuff like this. And I love it. And I know a ton of fans that are so excited for it, but then I also know a lot of fans who are very confused by it because it's a strange release. You know, something that I once said would be cool is if Marvel actually, instead of relying on the direct market to sell omnibuses, what if they would just fulfill them direct to people and basically said, like, look, remember, does anybody old enough to remember the Columbia Tape Club? What if Marvel was like, well, this is the Marvel Omnibus Club. Sign up. You can either sign up for just the X-Men omnibuses or like the full line. And if you sign up, you will get an omnibus shipped to your door at a slight discount once a month. But if you sign up, we will also this year be producing some totally weirdball omnibus like this that they could never have assurances would sell. And we might print just enough for this club and for direct market orders. It's not going to go to bookstores. So you've got to be a member of this club to buy this omnibus. If you look at first month sales of most of these Marvel omnibuses, they're anywhere between 800 or 900 units to about 2,500 units in the direct market. Now that doesn't include people who are getting them from Amazon or any other traditional bookseller, but it does include everybody who's buying them from comic book stores, as well as I think sites like In Stock Trades. So you know, at the point that it's 2,500 people, like, couldn't Marvel peel off 500 or 600 people to do a direct fulfillment plan to actually like know that they have the numbers to produce the omnibuses that they want to produce every year, and then also get weirder stuff like this into people's hands? Because I feel like just in the Facebook group that I'm involved in, there would probably be 500 people would sign up for that kind of thing. So it also often kind of just frustrates me that like Marvel's only market research is their failure. Like the only way they could know if they should put out a book like this for Spider-Man or somebody else that they have like a bunch of random material for, is to see that this book sells well and kind of like hold it up to the sales of the other lines and be like, do we think we'll do analogously on those lines? So it's kind of a little bit of a bummer because they don't take chances on weird stuff, even though some of the weird stuff might be what we really, really want. So I'm happy to have bought this omnibus. I think if you love X-Men and if you have Uncanny X-Men 1 and 2, omnibuses, which cover through the end of the Dark Phoenix saga, you should probably pick this one up too because it is the deleted scenes to those. As you've noticed, it ends a little bit into number 2 because the last reprint that had extra pages and backup stories was 138, and Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 2 extends through, I want to say, 141. So it does come almost to the end of that one. And if you don't have those books, don't get this. It doesn't really have a lot of use on its own. I mean, I guess if you have that as, you know, those as Marvel Masterworks, or if you're planning to get them, and Epics, maybe you might still want this. But I have to assume at some point Marvel will distill this down to some kind of paperback version in the future. But right now, if you've got those omnibuses, I think get this too. If you're somebody who loves rereading them, pouring through them, and wants kind of the missing stuff. And if you're wondering where all of these backup stories fit into continuity, because as you saw with that one, it only said this happened years later or decades prior. Like, what does that even mean? If you go to Crushing Crisis and look in the Crushing Comics section under X-Men ongoing series for Classic X-Men, I have laid out the exact continuity of every one of the backup stories in order of where they appear in the X-Men pantheon. So you could read through this book and flip back and forth and read the stories in actual order and know exactly where they fit. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't do that here. But I guess, you know, continuity is always changing, and they felt it was maybe a better future-proofing for this book to not be so explicit. Although there's some, this one says this story is set between X-Men 110 and 111. This is set during X-Men 29, so they were relatively specific. Maybe only the ones that were set in the farther past were in specific, and I just, luck of the draw, happened to open a page to that one. So that's what I have to say about the Classic X-Men Omnibus. If you want to see more of the interior, hear more about the content, there's so many other great YouTubers out there talking about it, but this is just me falling in love with it and putting it on my shelf. So here's the ceremonial shelving for Classic X-Men, all X-Men Classic. Woo! Okay. Join me next time as we step away from the hall and back to the shelf. I have a very limited number of books wrapped down here to get through, and then we're going to be done the unwrapping. So don't stop watching now. Please continue watching both this and all the other videos on this channel that aren't unwrapping oriented. And thank you so much for your continued support of Crushing Comics.